Hi, I'm Chuck. I'm going to tell you how to set up and use your JamHub. Let's start with plugging in the power. Power supply plugged into the wall. There's a connector on here that goes right into the back of the unit, and you'll see the power light comes on when you do that. There is something about the connector that I want you to know, which is that you need to pull back on it in order to remove it from the JamHub. So let's go from there. You'll notice that there are 6 sections on this green room model along the front, and then a 7th R section on the back. All of these sections can operate identically, so if you understand how to use one of them, you understand how to use all of them. There's a 1/4-inch instrument input, there's an XLR mic input, and a stereo 1/4-inch headphone output. And they each have access to each other's sections. Say I'm plugging into section 1, I can turn myself up, but I can also turn up all the other sections as much or little as I want. There are 7 knobs where you would dial up how much you want to hear, each section having their own control. Channel 1 would be me here, channel 2, channel 3, etc. Say I'm in section 1, I'll bring myself up and bring up the other players. There's also a stage control, which is a pan pot, which allows the musicians to place themselves from left to right across the sound stage and spread out, if you will. That way we're not sharing the same space and fighting over that space. We can spread out a little bit, and that allows us to hear more naturally and more clearly. Then you'll want to plug in your instrument and your microphone into your own section. To do that, we would go into the 1/4-inch for the instrument. It's a stereo input jack, expecting a stereo signal from whether it's a pod like I use for my guitar, or an electronic drum kit, or a keyboard, whatever have you. Anything with a headphone jack is a great option, a great choice for use with the JamHub. There's also an XLR microphone input jack as well. And on the green room and tour bus models, on the back of the unit there is a push-button phantom power selector, which would apply 48 volts phantom power to your condenser mics, increasing your choices for microphones, etc. And once you get something plugged into the unit, we're going to use the buttons down on the bottom here. They're trim pots that are going to allow us to match the level coming out of your sound source to the input stage of this device. I can demonstrate that with a microphone, and let's get what we need here, a microphone and a cable. And I'll just go ahead and plug that into section 1 here, right on the front. Grab the mic and turn it up until it goes red. Hey, 1, 2, 2, 2, and then back it off just a little bit. Hey, 1, 2, and that gives you an optimum. You've gotten, screaming into the mic, I'm getting as much signal into the system as I can get without overdriving the input and causing distortion. Same for the instrument, whether it's your pod or keyboard or drum kit, whatever have you. Play as loud as you're gonna, turn up that trim until it blinks red, and then back off a little bit, just like you would with a conventional mixer. Once you've done that, now you have a headphone volume control that allows you to decide how much you want to hear. Between channel 1 here, I would bring myself up, and then the headphone level to get a desired volume, and then I can bring up the other players around that to set up my own mix. There's also on the outside of that section of knobs here an effects return knob that allows each musician to decide how much or little of the internal effects they would like to hear in their mix. The effects are only applied to the XLR microphone inputs, not to the 1/4-inch instrument inputs. Okay, we have the mic plugged in. Now we're going to plug in the instrument to section 1 here. And I'll grab one of our JamHub stereo cables, TRS on both ends. We're going to take that from the headphone out on my modeling device and plug it into the stereo instrument in on my JamHub. And just like the microphone, we would set its trim so that the level coming out of here will get as much of that into the JamHub as we can without knocking it into red and overdriving it and distorting it in unwanted ways. Another feature that I want you to be aware of is the switch here located right between section 1 and the R section. The R section could just be for a 7th player in this system, or it could be dedicated to a mix that's going to feed a recorder. And the neat thing there is that if I plug my headphones into section 1, I can listen to my More Me mix, the one where I have channel 1 turned up louder than everybody else. and I can quickly flip this switch and listen to what's being sent to the recording device, all from one jack. And I can be, instead of being both the engineer and the musician at the same time, I can be the musician one moment and the engineer the next, and change hats instead of wearing both. Now, this mix here would either feed a pair of headphones if you had a seventh player in this situation, or if you were taking an analog out to your computer's sound card or even a cassette recorder, whatever you want to use to record. There's also, on the Green Room and Tour Bus models, a USB out, which would just take plain old CD quality audio, stereo audio, and send this mix right down a USB cable to your computer, just like you would with a conventional sound card. This would function as your sound card in that regard. You just take your USB cable, plug it into the back of the unit, run the other end into the USB in on your computer. Of course, in order for the computer to get sound from the JamHub and to return sound to the JamHub, you're going to want to set up the audio settings on your computer.